Okay, why don't we go ahead and get started? Thank you for coming, and especially thank you for coming all day today and giving up your Saturdays. We're very excited to be able to give you this opportunity and to meet everybody and hopefully engage you in the field of education. So first off, how many of you are already teachers? Oh, great. All right. How many of you are substitute teachers? Excellent. Thank you. We are so in need of substitutes. We have schools that cannot have workshops because they can't get substitutes. So we do need you. How many of you are wannabe substitutes? Okay. How many of you are wannabe teachers? Yay! Okay, well, welcome everybody. I'm Judy Halverson, even though your agenda said otherwise. We sort of mixed that up a little bit. First of all, why did I become a teacher? My mom always wanted to be a teacher and never was able to. So she really was my early inspiration. And then my sister was also a teacher, and she gave me this, and this actually happens to be the quote that was up there this morning. But my sister at one time gave me this engraved on a rock, and it sits on my desk. We affect the future, and we never know where that may end. Okay, so we have a very important job. And I really ran across this other quote from Lee Iacocca this past year sometime. You know, in a completely rational society, the best of us would be teachers, which we all are, right? We're the best. And the rest of us would just have to settle for something else. And I think that's so appropriate because if you're a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, did you not need a teacher to get there? You cannot have a job if you haven't had a teacher. So we really have the most important job in the world next to our families. I have been in Hawaii for 27 years. I won't tell you how many years before that I was in education, but I've been here for 27. I have an elementary credential, and I also have a special ed credential, grades K to 12. I actually ended up in special education because of some coursework when I was going through the education program at the University of California. I had to go into what we had back then were some state institutions. And in my observations, I went into a classroom for special needs children at that place, and I thought, wow, this is pretty exciting. And I was just so impressed with what was going on in that classroom for special needs kids that I went to find out about learning how to teach those students as well. So I went through a dual program. And so here, I've been in the classroom. I was an autism consultation teacher at the district level. Now I'm at the district level in Central as a resource teacher for special education, and I work with the schools. I came to the University of Phoenix about 5 years ago because I wanted to impact the future teachers in Hawaii. I really have enjoyed this. I love teaching adults as well. And so I really want us at the University of Phoenix to produce the best teachers we can for Hawaii. So that's where I am now as a second job. And we all sometimes do that because we just love teaching so much. Okay, so for today, we're going to talk about instructional strategies, discuss a few ideas. You may have heard of a lot of these. This was really developed as fairly basic, especially to help substitutes, but I hope all of you find a few nuggets in here. Mostly we like to promote student engagement. We want students to be engaged. They're not learning if they're passive, right? If they're not engaged, even if they're sitting for a little bit, their brains, I hope, are engaged. And then that's why we're talking about project-based learning so much these days, is to really engage the students. Now, all of these ideas I'm going to share with you, they really are complementary to whatever you're doing. if you're a substitute. If you're a substitute, you are going to follow those lesson plans that the teacher left you. You're not going to replace them with any of these ideas. You're not going to change them. But I'm hoping that some of these ideas may help you when all she says is cover pages 20 to 30 in your social studies book. How am I going to do that? So I'm hoping this will give you just some little ideas to fall back on. How many of you have heard of brainstorming and KWL? A lot of us. I don't think that that's really new, but it's meant to get the lesson started, kind of kickstart their brain and get them focused on the topic. So for those of you that are familiar with brainstorming, what's the purpose of brainstorming?
Just to bring out all the ideas that all diverse learners have to offer.
Excellent.
Put it into one nutshell, and we're going to go from there.
Excellent. Anyone else have a thought? Yes.
Find prior knowledge that you might be able to build off of.
Yeah, connect to prior knowledge. What do they already know?
Well, the other thing too is some kids are really shy about that, you know, and so if everybody's doing it like that, then they'll contribute and they'll learn something which they would otherwise.
Terrific, yes. So it's a very non-threatening kind of strategy to use where everyone usually feels comfortable participating. First of all, you need to make sure that they understand the question or topic. So we might be asking a question like solving a problem, and we really are looking for ideas around a solution. Or we might be just saying, what do you already know maybe about the American Revolution or something like that. If it's accessing prior knowledge, we typically set a time limit because we can get carried away talking about ideas, and we don't want this to be the entire lesson. We want it to just be the beginning. We want a lot of ideas, though. We want quantity, okay? So keep it going, make it fast. And then it's really important that all ideas are accepted, especially if you're brainstorming new ideas for a problem-solving activity. No criticism. It's every wild idea is a good idea, okay? So, and I think that's what we want our kids to learn, is that all ideas are acceptable and not to be nervous. Always wait until students are quiet before giving directions. We're going to come back to that statement at the end of this session. And a KWL chart, that's another one. It's very similar to brainstorming because what do I already know is the first piece of the chart. So it is that prior knowledge again. But then what do the students want to know? What would motivate them? What would interest them in this topic? How can we engage them? How can we get their buy-in to want to learn? And then the last column is what have I learned? We need to be sure we come back to this. This entire chart is important. Sometimes I think we get hung up on the first and we forget to come back to the others. We need to look at that column too, though. If they're going to tell you what they're interested in and what would motivate them, you need to acknowledge that and try to bring some of that material in, right? And then at the end of a unit, if you're the teacher, or at the end of a lesson, if you're the substitute, we're going to come back to what did we learn today? What did we learn in this lesson? And that reinforces the learning, and it kind of cements it in their memory as well. So we want to make sure that we do that part. The other thing I like is that this can be done individually. We don't have to do it as a group. If you do it individually, it requires all students to participate, right? No getting away with sitting there quietly while everyone else contributes. So often I will start individually. I will give them a KWL chart individually. I'll walk around, make sure that they're all engaged, and then we'll brainstorm or do the first column together. But I like doing it individually to get them all going. So how many of you are familiar with graphic organizers? Everybody, right? What kind of graphic organizer might you use in your own life? Anything? Calendars? Absolutely, that keeps me organized visually. Yeah, so we use a lot of these kinds of things anyhow, and we're often very visual. I think it helps us organize and see relationships when we can do this. So a Venn diagram is this first one. And typically we just see these two. We don't see a Venn diagram with a third concept. But for older students and more advanced concepts, we need to be building the connections between more than just two ideas. So at a very basic level, we talk about comparing characters in a book, maybe. And how many of you really have never used a Venn diagram? Anybody, to be honest? So we're looking at what is the same and different, right? Where's the overlap? So in 3, there's a very small overlap maybe. But this is how they're the same, and then how 2 are the same, and then how they're different. So that's one good example of a graphic organizer. And then another one is the concept map, where you just have a bubble in the middle and you have all these ideas coming out, right? And that's a very basic, popular one. So sometimes we just give the students a topic, and then as we're discussing the topic, we'll let them develop their own graphic organizer. So they'll have a little arrow off, and they'll make their notes about, if we're using insects, they'll make their notes about ants as we're talking about it. And the other thing I really like this one for is writing organization. So if you give them a topic, like insects, then they can develop their own organizer about how they're going to write their paper. So they branch off with all their main ideas off the topic, and every main idea then has details off of it, and eventually each line, each arrow then connects to a paragraph. And so it's a very easy organizer for students to get started in writing, and I use it with the youngest of kids to very advanced. Any other graphic organizers that you use in your schools that you might want to share?
It's the flow charts.
Flow charts.
You know, critical events from the beginning, middle to the end.
Okay, good. Sequencing.
Yeah, especially in full comprehension reading.
Yeah, important. Okay, anyone else?
T-diagram.
I'm sorry?
T-chart.
T-charts. And what do you use a T-chart for?
Big ideas and the key details.
Big ideas, key details. Exactly. Anyone else?
Plot diagram. Plot diagram.
Okay. For stories, plots. Okay. Timelines, absolutely, especially in history and actually for anything. Okay, thank you. We have a lot of ideas for graphic organizers, and various kinds are used for different types of assignments. Okay, questioning strategies. I don't think any of this is new. Be positive, don't be negative. If they don't quite get the answer, rather than saying, oh no, what do you say to a student whose answer isn't really quite right? What would you do rather than saying you're wrong?
Be more specific.
Be more specific. Okay.
Not quite right.
Okay. Can you expand on that? Tell me a little bit more.
Well, focus on, did you answer the question or did you do something else?
Okay. So maybe we would rephrase the question for them.
Let's explore the possibilities. Maybe there is a valid reason behind your...
So tell me more. Okay, good.
Maybe see how they got there so we can work together to get to the correct end
Yeah,
result.
so what makes you say that? Where's that coming from? And so all of those are very good ideas rather than just saying, oh no, you're not right. So the other thing you have in your handouts, you have these question stems. How many of you have heard of Webb's depth of knowledge? A couple of you. How many of you have heard of Bloom's taxonomy? Okay, very similar, okay? Bloom's has been around forever. We use it all the time. So the idea is the bottom level is more recalling of facts, but when you develop thinking skills at a higher level, then we go on to critical thinking and synthesis and analysis. Whoa, okay, 10 minutes, okay. All right, so I'm a fast talker, but what I want you to see here, when you need questions, when you need to try to come up with something on the spur of the moment, I keep this hanging around my desk a lot. And you need to get used to using it, but it can be a really helpful little cheat sheet kind of idea to help you ask some of those questions and reach that higher level of thinking. Cooperative learning, I think we all know what that is. I won't spend a lot of time on it. But in groups, how do we keep kids engaged? And what are some of the, well, one of the ways we keep them engaged is to give them a role in that cooperative group. So what are some of the roles we use in a learning group that, I don't know how to ask that. Maybe that's not the way.
One person will be the facilitator.
One person will be the facilitator. Excellent. Then what else do we need?
One will be taking notes.
Taking notes, the note taker,
Timekeeper.
a timekeeper. Excellent. So they all have jobs, and that helps keep them focused. How many of you have heard of a jigsaw? You can read this on your own. I just want to go to this visual. Anyone heard of a jigsaw? All right. So the idea is that you use this with a lot of material that you want to cover, and you don't want to spend quite so much time. So you put the students in groups of 3 or 4, okay? So these are your student groups. And then you assign by number and this has nothing to do with abilities. Ones aren't the smartest, okay? But you just assign groups, and they could be numbers, ones, they could be a color blue or whatever, depending on your grade level. But then they go out into their expert groups, and they become an expert in their section. And what they do is they read their part or explore their part, and they write down what are the critical elements, what are the most important things that we need to know from their section. And when they get that, they have to write it, because if they don't write it, they will forget, trust me. So they have to write something down. And then they come back in their student groups, and they all share their parts and become experts at everything. Okay, does that make sense? Great. Okay. Just be careful that one part of understanding isn't important for all the other groups. You don't want to have a topic like response to intervention or RTI. You got to know what that is before you can even know how to use it in an elementary or secondary. So you can't use it for something where one part relies on another. Okay, reviewing strategies. I'm just going to let you read that later because you're all good readers and we need to move on. But when you need to review, there's some really good ideas in there. Fill-in activities. How many of you have heard of sponge activities? Okay, what's a sponge activity?
If I still can recall, it's like a sponge, right? You just leave it on water, it just grabs everything.
Oh, yeah.
Same with the ideas of students. You just, you know, it's like osmosis. It just sinks in their head.
Okay.
Like
Like when there's extra time between, like let's say you have 2 assignments that the teacher gives, or however many, then if there's extra time.
Yeah, so extra time between assignments, or my gosh, I'm done and the bell's not rung yet. I got 10 minutes to fill. What am I going to do? Especially as a sub. I needed these as a substitute. I call them sponge activities, and the term comes from having students absorb learning all day long, absorb knowledge. And so when you need fillers, I gave you some. There's some up there, some for elementary. There's a page for secondary, and there's a couple of websites in here that are just excellent for further ideas. Okay, so how do you get attention? This goes back to that star. So we can't really give directions until we get students' attention. So how do we get their attention? What do you do? Yell at them? No. Tempting? No.
Clap your hands.
Clap your hands. Sure, absolutely.
Because they're talking, they're so
Yeah,
noisy.
and then they can hear you, right?
Right.
Yeah, so we need a cue. Sorry?
With the lights.
Flick the lights. That's very typical in our classrooms. That definitely gets their attention.
As my substitute for how many years, I usually tell them to, I turn on my timer, 2 minutes of silence, absolute silence.
Okay.
I want to hear one voice, and then you got to raise your voice, and you got to make them know who is the alpha in the classroom.
Okay, yeah. So what we want to do is some kind of cueing system, right? But you have to teach them that cueing system, okay? Don't think they're going to know it just because you do it. So you have to teach it. But let me play this little clip in closing for some ideas.
Hey guys, it's Janine with GetMoreStuffJobs.com. Today I wanted to share with you 3 of my favorite attention getters. These are used in the classroom when the kids are busy or doing other things and you want to get all their attention on you, their eyes on you, and their voices off. In order for any of these to work, you have to set them up properly and explain to the kids what you need them to be doing by the time you get to the end. The first one is a rhythmic clapping. This one's very popular in the schools. If you walk into any school and do it, most of the kids will follow suit and know what to do. You clap a rhythm, and then the kids echo it back. So the most popular one that I've seen is this one, and then the kids all clap it back. This gets their hands to drop whatever they were using, and then their hands are clapping, and then their eyes are on you ready to listen. The next one is counting backwards from 5 down to 0. So I hold my hand up in the air, and I count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. As soon as the kids hear that I'm counting, they join in. They put their hands up and they start counting down with me, which once again gets their hands busy. Their voices are talking, so they're not talking to anyone else. And it gets louder as they're counting with you. It gets loud enough for all the kids to be able to hear. So it's really, really effective. The last one is one of my favorites, and it works really well. You say, if you can hear me, clap once. And all the kids clap once. But usually only a few kids can hear you the first time. Then you say, if you can hear me, clap twice. If you can hear me, clap 3 times. Each time, more and more kids will hear that you're clapping, and they'll give you their attention. I hope you can use these attention getters in the classroom. If you'd like more tips, go to my website at GetMoreStuffJobs.com, where you can also find my ebook. You'll find the link posted below. That's it for today. Thanks.
Okay. That help a little? So just make sure you actually teach them what your expectations are for that cueing system, whatever you choose. And don't try to teach more than one if you're a substitute during a day. You know, just go in there and be consistent so that they know what's coming. So we're running out of time. Are there any questions that you have?
Oh, there was one where I used being a substitute for so many years. I got everybody, it's so out of control, especially middle class students, at that age. I get them all standing up
Oh,
and stretch.
good.
Walking around and tell them, are you ready to refocus? Talk to each one of them.
Yeah.
Sit down and they start over again.
Actually, movement's very effective. Let
They
them,
get restless after a while.
yeah, they do. So they need to get up and move around. There's a lot of those kind of activities that are kind of brain refreshers, so to speak. But movement is very effective for that. Thank you for sharing. And so, any other questions? Anything else? Yeah.
I had this child that had some problems, and so he ran away. He opened the door and he took off, and that was scary for me.
What did you do? Is that putting you on the spot? Maybe I shouldn't do that. Okay.
No,
Okay.
no. I didn't think about anything then. I had to take care of the class, so I cannot go and get the kid.
So,
But yet I cannot let the kid run off, so I didn't know what to do. So I waited a while. I don't know. I was worried, so I just left the classroom and went out. But I don't think that was the right thing to do.
okay, there are options here.
Yeah.
So who's ever been in a position like this?
Well, go ahead.
Normally, because the school's responsible for the kid,
Yes.
there's, if you have an EA or someone in there that
Nobody.
person will come.
Nobody.
Here's myself is security.
Yeah.
It's a security, it becomes a security issue.
Yes.
Where you call.
So you have,
To your neighbor.
yeah, so there's lots of things. Anybody else, you can call for security or call the office, whatever.
Our counselors would normally take those calls because oftentimes when they're
Okay. Counselors
that
would
was
know
like
about them
first call.
probably.
kind of finding your resources before you get to school, because I know I've been at a school where that was a common issue.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
just kind
So
of
you,
knowing where to
so
call.
you drop everything, you call them.
I just run to the phone and let them know,
Yeah.
and then normally they'll call out to the office if not,
Call the
and
office.
take charge of it.
Yeah,
So
the
do you call
office.
the office, or do
Yes,
you
call
call
the-
the counselor?
Just call the office. They'll find who they need.
I come from a middle school, and the kids who are really smart about it, they have all the power in the world. When they walk out that classroom,
Right.
they know that somehow along the line, their safety is an issue. So I remember seeing this one kid, 5 adults walking around campus following them, just because they can't lay a hand on the kid, and because you're really responsible for the kid.
You are.
They realize how much power they have. They can walk out of the classroom, just do what they do until the parent is called or a counselor can settle them down. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, we need to wrap up. One other thought, though, is if the other thing you might want to do, and you do have to call because you can't leave your class. But the other thing is if you can either yourself or ask another student to kind of watch where that student goes when they leave so that you can give the office an idea of where he might be headed.
I wasn't sure if I should tell the kids to behave, ask someone to watch the kids, and I go out and
Yeah.
look for him.
There's not a lot of good things there, yeah. Okay, thank you so much for coming. I've enjoyed having you all, and please enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.